in the structural organization of animals, so far we have studied about the animal tissues, different types of animal tissues like epithelial, connective, then muscular tissue and nervous tissue. So in the next part of this chapter, we will be studying about the life history of earthworm. So earthworm is a saprophytic or animal which belongs to phylum Annelida. So earthworm, there are different species of earthworm actually. Now here we are studying one example, that is Peritema postuma. So this is the genus and species name of earthworm. There are different genera, there are different species of earthworm. This Peritema postuma is one example which we are studying about the life history. So the morphology, the anatomy and reproduction. So morphology of earthworm. The earthworm Peritema postuma is a segmented animal. So this animal which is segmented like this. So there are metamerism. We have seen in the phylum Annelida that the metameric segmentation is seen in the phylum Annelida. It is a true segmentation. So the segments are externally and internally clear. Our body is segmentally divided externally and as well as internally. So that is why in earthworm also the same thing what we come across. Then other examples like Neris and all that. So in this there are about 100 to 120 segments in this body. So in the Peritema postuma there are about 100 to 120 segments. And the first segment, it is having the mouth and it is called as prostomium. And so this prostomium is a small wedge-like structure. So it is a small wedge-like structure. This is called as prostomium. And the last segment is called as peristomium. So this first segment is called as peristomium. So in the segments here, we find such kind of these things. In the first, there is a wedge-shaped. The segment which is having the mouth, that region is called as the prostomium. And the first segment is called as the peristomium. And like that, there are 100 or 120 segments. Now the 14th, 15th and 16th segments here. So this region, actually it is not large. So this region is called as clitellum. So this is called as clitellum. Now in the clitellum, so the clitellum is a region which consists of, it is a small band-like structure. So this clitellum, it is a dark band-like structure, and this is called as clitellum. And this earthworm, it is having a opening. So there is a dark line in the center of the body here. On the dorsal side, you can find a line. So that is called as the mid-dorsal line. And there are genital pores on the ventral side. So this is the dorsal side. So on the ventral side, we find the genital pores. So these genital pores, that is, they are present on the 16th segment. So on the So there is a pair of male genital pores on the ventral side. So these male genital pores are in the actually 18th segment here. So here there are a pair of segments which are the male genital pores, and in the 14th segment here, so there is one female pore on the ventral side. So this is the female genital pore present on the 14th segment on the ventral side. On the 18th segment you will find the male genital pores which open there. So that is about the morphology of the earthworm. And in addition to this, we find certain pores in each segment. So they are called as the nephridiopores. So these nephridiopores are the openings of the excretory system. So the excretion takes place by nephridia, which are present in the segments. And we shall study there are different type of nephridia in the when we deal with about excretion. And in addition to this, there are regions which help in, there are structures which help in locomotion, which are called as the setae. So in every segment there are setae. So these setae are locomotory structures. They are found in the rows in all the segments, and these setae they are sometimes absent in the clitellum region and in the first and the last segments. So setae are actually somewhat F-shaped structures. So they, whenever the earthworm is moving on the soil particles, so it helps to have a grip on the soil particles so that the locomotion will be very easy. So these setae are the organs of locomotion or the structures of locomotion. So setae are absent in the first segment, clitellum, and in the last segment. In all the other segments there are setae which help in the locomotion. And so that is about the morphology of the earthworm. So this is the prostomium, where the mouth is present. So the prostomium means it is the region where the mouth is having. So where the mouth is present, it is somewhat a wedge-shaped structure, that is called the prostomium. So behind that there is the first segment, actually what is called as the peristomium. So the first segment is called as the peristomium, and where actually the mouth is present, and then the other segments are there. So 14th, 15th, 16th segment constitutes the clitellum, which is a somewhat dark bandless structure where we cannot see the segments clearly 14, 15. So this includes the 14th, 15th and 16th segments. So there is a female genital pore in the 14th segment. There is a pair of male genital pores in the this 18th segment. Then the locomotory organs are the setae, and the nephridiopores also open in the segments. So that is about the morphology of the earthworm. Now coming to the next, the digestive system, then circulatory system, nervous system, excretory system, and also the reproductive system. Now in the digestive system, so the mouth, which is present in the prostomium, it opens inside a small cavity called as the buccal cavity. So the buccal cavity is somewhat broader, and it occupies from the first to the fifth segment, that is the buccal cavity. So where the food particles or the soil particles enter, and then the buccal cavity opens into a broad sac-like structure called as the pharynx. So the pharynx is the region which is in the between the fifth and the sixth segment, and then the pharynx continues into a tube-like structure called as the esophagus. So this alimentary canal which continues from the mouth till the anus. So the esophagus, which is a short segment of six, which constitutes in the sixth and seventh segment. So that is a short tube, and then the esophagus opens into a sac-like structure called as the gizzard. So the gizzard is the region which contains some kind of peristomial teeth, and where the food is grinded into small particles, and that gizzard occupies the 8th and the 9th segment. And then the gizzard continues into a short stomach, and the gizzard which is there, this gizzard helps in grinding the soil particles and also the decaying leaves. So whatever the food is taken, that is the decaying leaves or soil particles, that is grounded into fine powder like in the gizzard. That is in the characteristics of this earthworm. Further, the stomach continues from the 9th to 14th segments, that means till the first segment of the clitellum. And this stomach which is located there, it is containing some specified type of glands called as the calciferous glands. So these calciferous glands which are present, so they help in the neutralizing the humic acid into the humus. So the humic acid which is present in the decaying matter, so that humic acid is neutralized in the humus of that material, and then the stomach continues into the intestine from the 15th segment till the last segment. So from the 15th segment there is a broad intestine which continues till the last segment, and in the 26th segment of the intestine there is a pair of projections which are seen. So these pair of projections are called as the intestinal cecum. So that is seen in the this intestine. And in addition to this, the intestine is having folds inside. As in our intestine, in the human intestine, the small intestine is having villi. They are finger-like projections in the wall of the inner wall of the intestine. Similarly, in the intestine of the earthworm, there are certain folds. So these folds are called as typhlosoles. So this typhlosoles are the foldings which are present in the intestine. So that means they help in the surface, they increase the surface area, and that typhlosoles help to absorb more food in the small intestine, or sorry, in the intestine of the earthworm. So that is how the digestion takes place here, and here the digested food is absorbed by the membranes of the intestine, and thus the undigested food material is thrown out, and the small intestine, this intestine opens into the exterior by the help of an opening called as anus. So that is the digestive system of the earthworm. Now the next system of the earthworm is the circulatory system. So the circulatory system here, it is very simple. There is a dorsal blood vessel, there is a ventral blood vessel. So in the earthworm, so in the dorsal side there is a blood vessel. So this is the dorsal midline. On the ventral side there is another blood vessel which is called the ventral blood vessels. So these are the main blood vessels which further branch in the body and give rise to many branches. And these two blood vessels are connected by what are called as a pair of lateral hearts, a pair of lateral esophageal hearts. So these lateral hearts are present in the 7th and 9th segment. In the 7th segment there is one lateral heart. In the 9th segment there is one lateral heart. Similarly, in the 12th segment and in the 13th segment there is a pair of lateral esophageal hearts. So that is the blood circulates from the dorsal to the ventral, and again from the dorsal to the ventral between the hearts. So the lateral hearts, the blood which is collected by the dorsal vessel, so it is passing through the hearts to the ventral vessel, and from the ventral vessel back to the again to the dorsal vessel through the branches of the ventral vessel or the blood vessel. And the blood which is present, it contains hemoglobin. It is red in color as human beings are having. So this blood is manufactured, as in our body blood is manufactured in the bone marrow. That is, when we have studied in the animal tissues, we have seen the bone marrow, actually it produces the RBC, WBC and all that. But here in the earthworm, as there are no bones, means it is invertebrate, so the blood is produced by blood glands which are present in the 4th and 5th and 6th segments here. So in the 4th, 5th and 6th segments there are small glands which are called as the blood glands. So these blood glands, they secrete the blood, and which circulates in the body from the dorsal to the ventral and from the ventral to the dorsal. So from the dorsal to the ventral it is transported by the lateral hearts and the lateroesophageal hearts. That is a simple circulation which is closed type of circulatory system in this earthworm. But in the some other types, in phylum Arthropoda and all that, so there is open type of circulatory system where the blood does not flow, or the blood is not transported in well defined vessels. But here the blood is transported in well defined vessels, that is in between the dorsal and the ventral blood vessels. That is about the circulatory system. Now coming to the next, excretory system, where we are not having any important diagrams there. So the excretory system is brought about by excretory structures called as nephridia. So the excretory organs are nephridia. So these nephridia, or sometimes this excretory system is also called as the nephridial system, and in each segments the nephridia are present, and these nephridia are again of 3 types based on the distribution in the body. So the septal nephridia are present. So the 3 types of nephridia: the septal nephridia, integumentary nephridia, and lastly the pharyngeal nephridia. So these are the 3 types of nephridia which we can see in the earthworm. So the septal nephridia are present from the 15th to last segment, that is in the intestinal region. As we have mentioned here, the intestinal is located from the 15th segment till the last segment. The septal nephridia are also distributed in the segments from 15th to the last segment, and the integumentary nephridia, they are present in the 3rd to the last segment, means they are found in many number. So since from the 3rd segment we find the integumentary nephridia, and these nephridia are large in number, we can say. But the pharyngeal nephridia, they are very few. From the 4th to 6th segment they are present only in the pharynx region. So that means a part of buccal cavity and esophagus. So the pharyngeal nephridia, they are called as. So based on the position, they are referred as a septal, then integumentary and pharyngeal nephridia. So whatever the type of nephridia, but structurally they differ each other. So though they differ each other, but the functions are same. So they collect the waste material, the excretory material from the body inside, and that material is sent out through pores which are present on the this surface of the segments. Each segment has openings of the nephridia, nephridial pore we call it as, and that waste material is sent out by these types of nephridia. So the excretory system, we can say that it is very simple. It takes place by nephridia. These are the excretory organs. So that is why the excretory system is also called as the nephridial system. So this nephridial system is the excretory system of earthworm. So there are three types of nephridia which brings about excretion. Then coming to the next part, that is the nervous system. So this nervous system, when we come to the nervous system here, the nervous system consists of a pair of supraesophageal ganglia, a pair of subesophageal ganglia, and segmental ganglia. Now this supraesophageal ganglia or the cerebral ganglia, we generally call it as a brain. Sometimes it is not a true brain, but generally we can say, and it is present in the third segment of the body, that is the earthworm. And these ganglia, supra means above, means they are present above the esophagus. That is why they are called as supraesophageal ganglia or cerebral ganglia. They function like the brain. And ganglia means actually a group of nerve cells which are aggregated in a mass. An aggregation of nerve cells or a mass of nerve cells is called as ganglion. Ganglia plural. So this a pair of supraesophageal ganglia are present, cerebral ganglia. Then in the fourth segment we find the subesophageal ganglia, which are also in pair. Sub means below or towards the ventral side they are present. That is why subesophageal ganglia. Now these the supraesophageal ganglia and the subesophageal ganglia both are connected by a ring-like structure, which are actually made up of nerve fibers, nerves. That is called as the circumpharyngeal connectives. So circumpharyngeal connectives are connecting the supraesophageal ganglia and the subesophageal ganglia. It is a ring-like structure which is passing around the esophagus region. And from the subesophageal ganglia arise a ventral nerve cord. So on the ventral side there is a nerve cord which is double. So that is double ventral nerve cord is present in the this region. So this ventral nerve cord so the ventral nerve cord is a single nerve cord actually. So this nerve cord connects from one ganglion to another ganglia like this. So double ventral nerve cord we find in cockroach actually. So in earthworm there is a single nerve cord which is a long thread like double layered structure actually. This nerve cord which runs from the subesophageal ganglia to the last segment, and in each segment there are segmental ganglia. In each segment also there are ganglia which are called as the segmental ganglia, and these ganglia are connected by the ventral nerve cord till the last ganglion. That is how the nervous system consists of. And the nervous system can be divided into three parts again. Now whatever we have studied, this is called as the central nervous system. The nerves which are arising from the supraesophageal ganglia, that constitutes the peripheral nervous system, just like as in the human being we have mentioned. So this supraesophageal, the subesophageal and the segmental ganglia and the ventral nerve cord all constitutes the central nervous system. The nerves which are arising from the central nervous system, from the nerves which are arising from this, they constitutes the peripheral nervous system. So for example here, from the brain, that means the supraesophageal ganglia, there are 3 or 8 to 10 pairs of nerves from the brain, and there are 2 pairs from the circumpharyngeal. That means so there are like this nerves which originate from the this region, and see similarly from the subesophageal ganglia there are 3 pairs. So here the 3 and here 3. So 3 pairs of nerves originate from the subesophageal ganglia, and from the subesophageal ganglia the ventral nerve cord arises and continues till the last segment, that is the peripheral. And the sympathetic nervous system includes the sensory and motor nerves which fuse to form the nerve plexus. Nerve plexus means they are the regions where the nerve fibers aggregate, and in the ventral region of the alimentary canal we can observe such kind of nerve plexus. That is about the nervous system of this earthworm. And coming to the next, the reproductive system of earthworm. Now the earthworm is hermaphrodite, that means bisexual. The male testis and the female. So the testis is the male reproductive organ, the ovary is the female reproductive organ. So both are present in the same animal or in a single animal. So such animals we know that they are called as hermaphrodites, or generally we can also call them as bisexual animals, but usually bisexual word is used for plants, bisexual flower. So hermaphrodite, earthworm. So there is the testis and the ovary. So this testis and ovary, they are present. So the testis is present in the 10th and 11th segment. So here the 10th and 11th segment. So 6, 7, 8, 9, here we find these structures. And from the 6th to 9th segment, there are 4 pairs of sac-like structures which are called as spermathecae. So the spermathecae are the regions where the sperms are stored. So sperms are stored in the this spermathecae, and they are located in the 6th to 9th segments. So they receive the sperms and store the sperms. So these open outside by the small pores here in the 6th to 9th segments. So the spermathecae open in the 6th segment, 7th, 8th and 9th by small pores which receive the sperms and store the sperms. That is what they do. Next, in the 10th and 11th segment, the testis, a pair of 2 pairs of testis are present. So this one pair is present in the 10th segment, and another pair is present in the 11th segment. So like that, in the 10th and 11th segment, we find there is testis present, and these testis they produce the sperms, and the 10th and 11th segments which constitute the testis there. Now from the testis originates a duct called as the vas deferentia. So this vas deferentia is the duct which runs downwards posteriorly, and that ducts actually till the 18th segment it is continued. So this is the 12th segment, 13th segment, and the 14th segment. 15, 16, 17 they are present here. So in the 18th segment, this vas differentia will open as a pair of male genital apertures. So in the morphology we had mentioned when we studied, in the 18th segment there is a pair of male genital pores. So those male genital pores are these structures which open by the help of the vas differentia. So the vas differentia, they are a pair of ducts which originates from the testis, and they open out by the male genital pores. So that is about the male part of the reproductive system. Then if you come here, there are some funnel-like structures called as the spermaducal funnels in the testis region, and there are also regions called as seminal vesicles where sperms are stored. Means when they are produced in the testis, the seminal vesicles are the regions where the testis, where the sperms are produced. Similarly in other animals, even in human beings, so the testis contains seminal vesicles. So these seminal vesicles, they produce the sperms, and the sperms are stored in this spermatheca, but not the sperms of this testis. So I will explain when there is the reproduction. So then these are the seminal vesicles, that is the male, and just in the 18th, 19th and 20th segments, 18th and 19th segment, there is a pair of prostate gland. So the prostate gland and the spermatic duct opens out through another opening, that is a common opening of these two ducts. And in the this 16th segment and the 19th segment, there is two pairs of accessory glands. So those accessory glands, they also help in the reproduction by certain releasing certain secretions. That is this part of the male. Now coming to the female part, which concludes a pair of ovaries. So as they are present in the same animal, a pair of ovaries which are present in between the 12th and 13th segments. So at the junction of the 12th and 13th segments, we come across the ovaries which are attached in between the two segments. So suppose this is the 12th segment and this is the 13th segment. So at the junction of the, or the septum we can say, in between the two segments, the wall which is present there, the partition, to that region the ovaries are attached. So that means they are neither completely in the 12th segment nor in the 13th segment. So at the septum of the 12th and 13th segments, the ovaries are attached. And below the ovaries, so there is the oviducal funnels which are present beneath the ovaries, and these oviducal funnels, they open on the ventral side in the 14th segment. So that means in the 13th segment these two funnels are present, oviducal funnel. So as they are somewhat funnel shaped structures, so they are having an opening. Now these two oviducal funnels, they join and open into a common opening in the 14th segment, that is the female genital pore. So this morphology, if you remember, so we have mentioned in the 14th segment the female genital pore single, it is present there, but in the 18th segment there is a pair of male genital pores. So male genital pores, they are the openings of the two vas efferentia, but whereas the 14th segment, the female genital opening is from the oviducal funnels. The two oviducal funnels, they join and open commonly into a single opening, that is the oviducal funnel. Now coming to the reproduction, how they reproduce, how the reproduction takes place. Now in the case of earthworm, though the earthworm is bisexual, but the sperms and the eggs, that is the female gametes of the same animal, do not fuse. So sometimes we think that the male gametes which are produced from the testis, that is the sperms which are produced, they are released, and the ovary contains the female gametes. So this female gametes and the male gametes, they fuse and form the zygote, and further development takes place. But here the sperm of one animal will not fuse with the egg of the same animal. Instead, what happens, two earthworms, they come in contact with each other, and there is exchange of the sperms between the two. So the sperm of one animal are released into the body of another animal, and similarly the sperms of that animal is received by the other animal. So there is exchange of sperms which occurs between two worms during a process called as mating, and this mating is done, and the fertilization takes place here. So mating is actually done by the male apertures which are there. These come in contact with the openings of the spermatheca. So suppose this is one earthworm. So in the 6th, 7th, 8th and the 9th, we find the openings of the spermatheca here also. So here also there are openings of the spermatheca, and here this earthworm will come in contact with the male genital pores of the other earthworm, opposite earthworm. So the male genital pores of one earthworm will come in contact with the spermathecal openings of its opposite earthworm. So what happens here, the sperms which are released, so these sperms which are produced in the testis, they are carried by the vas efferentia and they are released through the male genital apertures. When they are released, they enter into the spermatheca of the opposite earthworm. So when they enter into the earthworms, the spermatheca, that means here. So these store sperms which are received by the opposite partner. So the sperms of another worm is received and they are stored in this spermatheca. So when the spermatheca they store sperms, they later release the sperms when the ovary is having matured or well developed eggs. So these eggs which are produced by the ovary, they are fertilized from the sperms which are stored in the spermatheca. So the fertilization takes place inside, but the fertilization takes place between the sperms of another animal and the eggs of another animal. So here the fertilized eggs, they form what are called as cocoons. So these sperms and eggs which are fertilized, they are deposited with the nutritive fluid in the form of cocoons which are produced by the gland cells of the clitellum. Actually, when we study the anatomy of the clitellum, we come across certain gland cells in that region, because this is the region of the clitellum here. So here the eggs which are released after fertilization, so these fertilized eggs, they come out through this female genital aperture, that is the clitellum region. This is so 14th, 15th, 16th, it is a clitellum. So in the 14th segment, so this fertilized eggs are released in the form of cocoons. So that cocoons are released with certain secretions which are produced by the gland cells, and then the development takes place in the cocoons when they are deposited in the soil. So those cocoons which are released by the female genital aperture, so they are developing into embryos. So they develop into embryo, and after about 3 weeks the embryo will develop into young earthworms, and the cocoon, each cocoon takes an average 3 to 4 weeks to produce a young earthworm, and then the development is direct, so there is no any larva. So that means the cocoons which are present, they directly form the earthworms. There is no any caterpillar stage. Usually in case of insects we come across such type. So the egg develops into cocoon. For example, in the silk moth, when we just mention about that, so the egg develops into the cocoon, then the larva or the pupa, which is called as a caterpillar, then the caterpillar develops into young insect. But here the development is direct. The fertilized egg develops into cocoon, and the cocoon directly, without any production of larva, it produces the young one, and that is how the reproduction takes place in earthworm. So this is about the life history of earthworm, and that is how the earthworm is having different systems. So the digestive system and the reproductive systems are the two main systems in this, whereas the circulatory and the nervous system, they are very simple, which are not having more parts or explanation. Only in the digestive system we come across various regions which involve in the digestion, and these are this is the reproductive system of earthworm, which is bisexual. So that is about the life history of Peritema posthuma, a specific type of genus and species of earthworm, though there are several species of earthworm which are confined to different parts of the world. So this is one common earthworm which we find in our area, and that is about the life history of earthworm.